This video is brought to you by Mint Mobile. So this is the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I wanted to go over my experience, my thoughts, and just give you a review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max after about a month of usage. First, talking about the pricing. It starts at a price of $1199 here in the US, so that's $1,200. So it is a pricey phone. So for that price, you really want to know what you're getting yourself into. Now, of course, you can say that they haven't really increased the price from last year because the last year's price for the 256 model was $1199 as well, and this year the base model starts at 256 gigabytes of storage, so it technically didn't go up in price, but you did lose out that base model for those who didn't want to spend the extra $100. But nowadays I feel like you do need 256 to be the base model, but there's different variables there. But still, it technically didn't go up in price, but it lost the base model of 128. So first, talking about the build and design. From afar, you may think that looks very similar to the iPhone 14 Pro Max and maybe even the iPhone 13 Pro Max, as well as the iPhone 12 Pro Max. But there are some pretty big changes that they made this year. So first, the camera bump, it does look pretty similar to last year's and the years before. And I think it's pretty much the exact same size as far as how it takes up space on the back of the device, as well as how it performs when you put it on a flat surface, because the camera bump is pretty large. So it's still got that glass camera bump that has all three lenses, as well as your LiDAR sensor and your flash built into it. Then you have the rings, the metal rings of the cameras, and then the lenses themselves just barely stick out a bit. So on a flat surface without a case, it's gonna rock a good bit. The front glass and the back glass are some form of Corning Gorilla Glass ceramic shield, and for me so far, they've been holding up just well as far as durability. Granted, I have installed a screen protector straight on the iPhone 15 Pro Max because the glass is still flat. It's been flat, I think, throughout most of the iPhone's existence. So it's pretty easy to install some kind of cheap glass screen protector to protect it from just simple scratches. But where you will start to notice the difference is gonna be on the edges, the sides, the rails. The design first, it's a more softened finish, rounded off edges. It just feels very nice in the hand. Last year's 14 Pro Max, and I think even the 13 Pro Max or just 13 Pro series, had a stainless steel, sharp edged type of design. Not my favorite. It was kind of uncomfortable for me. So this has quickly become one of my favorite phones to hold in the hand without a case. It feels super soft and overall pretty comfortable. Now it is a big phone because it is the Pro Max version. So if you're not a fan of big phones, then obviously you're gonna want to go down to at least just the Pro series version. So, but in the hand, it feels very comfortable. And of course, you now have titanium. I believe they advertise it as aerospace titanium. The biggest change for me that I care about is going to be the fact that it made the phone a little bit lighter. Because again, last year's was stainless steel, so it did make it a little bit heavier. Now it also is a matte look and finish throughout the whole phone. So the back glass is matte and the sides are matte now as well, so you don't get that glossy look anymore, which may bring it down as far as how it looks premium wise, but I think it still looks pretty clean. Now, my particular colorway is the blue one, so it does show your greasy fingerprints pretty easily. So if you're not a fan of that, it can look kind of disgusting after some time. But if you use a case, then it should be no worries. But as far as other colors, they do have that natural titanium, a black titanium, a white, and of course, like I said, I have here the blue. And the whole phone is IP68 water and dust resistant rated as well. Talking about the rest of the buttons and the ports, power button and volume rocker are still there, but they are just slightly tweaked in their position, but they're there and they function as they did before. The action button is brand new to the iPhone 15 Pro Max series, and they actually replaced the mute switcher, so you no longer have that little switch toggle that allows you to switch the phone from ring to vibrate only. Now you have a button that can be customized to pretty much do a large variety of different functions and tasks for you. You do have the default options, which allow you to set a focus, open the camera, open the flashlight, create a quick voice memo, open the magnifier app, or you can launch a shortcut. And this is where you can kind of pretty much customize it to do anything you want. Personally, I have mine launch a mini menu. And the reason I have it do that is because I love the edge bar from Samsung's One UI. And I've always wanted something like that on other OS systems that don't offer the edge bar. And this is as close as it's going to get for the iPhone experience or iOS experience. Even though I do have to click an actual button, it actually might be nicer than having to swipe from the screen to launch this edge bar from the Samsung experience. So again, I just hold down and it launches a little menu that allows me to open up and select different apps that I have selected inside of that menu. But otherwise, I'm not super versed with shortcuts and the action button itself, so you can do all kinds of different things. I'm sure you can find a ton hundreds of videos out there now on YouTube that will guide you and help you create all kinds of different shortcuts that you can use with the action button. And something that is missing with the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a physical SIM card slot, at least here in the US. It's eSIM only for the iPhone, so at least for me, my eSIM experience has been thankfully really good. I've been using Mint Mobile, who I'm actually partnering with for today's video. So in this day and age, phones are getting more expensive, housing is getting expensive, foods, groceries, and just everyday stuff is getting much more expensive. So the last thing that you want to be a burden on you is your wireless phone bill. So with Mint Mobile, you're able to get a premium wireless experience for as low as $15 a month. So if you want to save big on mobile wireless, definitely check out Mint Mobile. I've been with Mint Mobile for the last 2.5 years now, so I've been a customer of them for a while, and I've had nothing but a good experience. And Mint Mobile is built on the largest 5G network, so you don't have to sacrifice speed, coverage, or data. And all Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, as well as lightning fast 5G and a free mobile hotspot. And they're able to keep the prices so low, $15 a month, because they don't actually pay for physical locations. There's no physical stores, so that means there's no physical salespeople. Everything is done online, so you're able to easily get started from the comfort of your home, whether it be with an eSIM like the iPhone 15 Pro Max uses here, or if your phone isn't compatible with an eSIM, you can still get a physical SIM card slot shipped out to you for free. Mint also offers a modern family plan, so with as little as 2 lines, you're able to set up a super affordable family plan. In fact, I switched my whole family over to Mint Mobile with one of those family plans, and everyone's been having a good experience overall. They're able to do their day-to-day stuff with no issues, whether it be browsing social media, browsing YouTube videos, or playing games, or just catching up through video calls. Everyone's been having a good experience, and it was easy to switch them over. It took like 15 minutes for each person to get themselves set up. And for the holidays, now through January 1st, you'll receive an additional 3 months free if you purchase any 3-month plan, including the unlimited plan. So why spend more? Why wait? Go ahead, use the links down in the description or use my QR code on the screen to sign up for Mint Mobile. Try mintmobile.com/tacotech. It really does help out the channel when you use my links. So let me know down in the comments if you made the switch. And next up at the bottom, they finally introduced USB-C. This is a game changer. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's just finally, thank you. Finally, they've added USB-C. It just makes things super convenient to be able to charge all my accessories, all my different stuff that I own. A lot of the tech I have uses USB-C. So to only have to carry one cable is nice. So thank you, Apple, for finally introducing USB-C. So with the introduction of USB-C, what has changed? I think the only major thing is, for me, the convenience. The ability to be able to use accessories that I already have that I use for my Android phones can now be used with the iPhone, because before, if I wanted to use, like for example, I have a backbone that's a controller. I could use that for my Android phones, but I could not use that with my previous iPhone 14 Pro Max. They did have a previous accessory or an current accessory that is specific to Lightning, but I wasn't going to pay another $100 to just use on my iPhone 14 Pro Max. So I feel bad for a lot of manufacturers who maybe spent a lot of money on creating these Lightning accessories. This transition had to happen at some point, so now it makes things just one universal port. I think it's very convenient, very nice. And the speeds, I believe, is USB-C 3.2 Gen 2. I do believe it means faster transfer speeds, so you can now use an external SSD with the iPhone, which comes into play with the camera stuff to be able to record straight on that SSD. Honestly, I don't really care for it, but it's still something there that's an option now. And you also have your dual firing speakers at the bottom as well as at the top near the earpiece. The speakers sound phenomenal. They sound amazing. They're probably one of the best speakers, if not the best speakers on any smartphone available out there. They have good sound, they have good depth, they have good overall fullness to it, so it doesn't sound tinny at all. I think overall these are really good speakers for watching content, watching movies, listening to music. And not to mention, I tend to find myself not keeping the volume at 100%. With some other devices, you do tend to keep your volume pretty high, from like 80 to 100%. With this, I typically keep it around maybe 50 to 65% or 70%. But besides that, I think the speakers are phenomenal. And I do want to mention that the haptics are pretty good on the iPhone 15 Pro Max as well. I like to use them when you're typing, and it feels pretty clean, pretty crisp, pretty tactile when you're typing. They're not super aggressive, not super rough, but they feel nice. And next, talking about the display, it is a 6.7-inch, 120Hz, 1440p, LTPR, Super Retina XDR OLED display. Basically a high-end flagship display. you're going to be more than satisfied with the display on the iPhone 15 Pro Max here. It does have a high brightness mode, or a peak brightness of 2000 nits when you're outdoors in the sun, and I believe the high brightness mode is around 1500 or so. The display's bezels have also been minimized just a little bit compared to last year, so it increased the screen to body ratio, and I believe that's also why they made the phone just a hair smaller now, so you're able to keep that same size display while also keeping the phone a little bit smaller, which is nice. But overall, display quality is fantastic and phenomenal. It's pretty good as far as I think as accuracy as well when you're looking at content. And it's also a smooth display because of the ProMotion 120 Hz. Something you will want to note is that when you're watching content, that pill cutout, the dynamic island, still, in my opinion, is kind of ugly and gets in the way. Depending on the aspect ratio of the video, usually a 16:9 video is no issue. But there's some aspect ratios where it's a little bit wider of an aspect ratio that may cause that dynamic island pill cutout to start to poke itself in there. And you can just see a little bit of the edge on the edge of the actual video. And once you pinch the zoom, you can definitely clearly see it, but in my opinion, over time, you're definitely going to get used to it, and it'll just become one of those things that you don't even notice after a while. So while at first it may be a glaring, ugly pill cutout, over time, it'll definitely be something you're used to. The display is also flat, so like I said earlier, I did install a screen protector on the display, which I love that the iPhone tends to make their displays flat, so it makes it easy and cheap as well to get some kind of tempered glass to install on your display. The display is also able to use an always-on display. Personally, I don't really use it only because I use an Apple Watch, so I'm able to get my notifications and time easily, quickly on my watch versus having to look down on my display. It also can be like a privacy concern if you don't want your notifications to be shown on your display at all times. Of course, you do have the option of toggling the notifications off, even the background of the wallpaper off as well. Of course, it's up to you if you want to use it though. As far as biometrics, you still only have Face ID, so they haven't introduced anything new as far as biometrics, but also they haven't really improved on the Face ID as well, which it's already pretty good, so there's really not much they could improve unless they want to make the camera a little bit wider to reach you at more crazier angles. But besides that, it works at most angles and it works in pretty low light situations as well, and it's overall very secure. One thing I do like with Face ID is that it keeps the notifications details hidden until it recognizes your face, and then it'll show you the details of it. Now moving on to the performance, you do have the new A17 Pro with 8 GB of RAM. And I believe it might be the latest LPDDR5X RAM, but don't quote me there. But either way, performance for me has been incredible. The 14 Pro Max was already really good, and the 15 Pro Max is honestly no difference. I personally have had a good overall experience. The only time I ever experience anything awful or bad is when maybe an app will crash here and there. It may not be the fault of iOS, it may be the fault of iOS, I'm not sure. It may just be the developers who haven't updated their app, but either way, I still have an overall solid experience on the iPhone 15 Pro Max here. The phone may get a little bit warm after some intensive usage, whether it be with a game or whether it be using the camera. It's still not hot. I never experienced the phone overheating. I know when it first released, there was a lot of overheating issues. Personally, I didn't get my iPhone until early October, so that was during and right when that new update came out. I think it was like 1 point something that helped reduce that overheating, and I've gotten various updates as well since then, which has been helping with the overheating issues. So I never really experienced any issues with overheating, so for me that issue is non-existent from my personal experience. But overall, opening apps, playing games, everything you need to do on the iPhone 15 Pro Max will be just fine. And my usage, I would say, is pretty moderate and pretty low-key. It's not something high-end, so I definitely think I'm not pushing the A17 Pro to its maximum capacity and maximum ability. But for those who do want to, I think you'll be more than satisfied with the experience coming from the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, as far as the software, you are on iOS 17 now, and whatever latest bug version you're on, it's overall pretty similar to iOS 16, at least in my opinion, and really won't change my mind as far as how much I either hate or love iOS. So first, let's talk about the lock screen setting. You can do things like customize the clock style, you can change the color, the actual type of clock you want to have, as well as add some widgets to the lock screen, which you're limited on what you can do, but I think if you download like a third-party app such as Widgy, you can probably install some other kind of widgets. The only thing I don't allow you to customize is the quick actions at the bottom. It's, I think by default, just the camera and the flashlight for everyone, so you're not able to change that up to be something else. And I do want to touch on the notifications while we're on the lock screen. I personally am not a fan of the way notifications are handled on iOS. Just one specific reason. It's just because after some time, your notifications are sent down to the notification center, which is nice because it kind of puts it out of mind and out of place, so you're not distracted by your constant notifications. But at the same time, I do miss a good amount of notifications. And I also noticed that if someone were to send you one message and then like 5 minutes later send you another message, and if you get another notification in between those messages, it splits them up. It doesn't keep them together to notify you and let you know that it's a whole group of one person. It's one message here, another message here. I don't know, it just looks kind of messy sometimes. So I am not a fan of the way notifications are handled on iOS. I do like, though, that you're able to use something called a notification summary. This allows you to basically put in notifications into a summary, as it entails in its name. So if you have apps that you don't really want to receive notifications consistently or as they're coming in, and just want to get a complete summary of those notifications, such as maybe games and social media apps, you can do that, put them all together, and schedule your notification summary to show up at specific times, as many times as you want. I think it helps with not being distracted, as well as keeping notifications somewhat organized. And then moving into the home screen, this is where, again, I just am frustrated with the lack of abilities and capabilities that you can do with the home screen customization. For one, the app grid size. This is a Pro Max. It's a large display. Why am I stuck to a 4:6 grid? I at least want to be able to put on here 5 across. Why? Why am I limited to that? I don't understand. If it was a smaller Pro version or the standard 15, I get it. Maybe it's a smaller display, but with the Pro Max, you should make it the default or give us the option of a 5:6. On top of that, you can't freely move apps and widgets anywhere on the home screen. They're forced up to like the top left. There's like a magnet of some sort on a home screen that forces that app towards the top left corner. It's annoying. I find that when I'm ever trying to just move one app to a different spot, it just causes everything to be moved around. It is so frustrating and annoying, but at least you do have the options to use something like stackable widgets, which can help with cleaning up the amount of pages that you use. So you can stack widgets to be on one spot. And also they've added interactive widgets now, so you can now interact with your widgets. And you may see, at least in some B-roll here, that some of my widgets are transparent or it looks like there's nothing there. Again, that's a third-party widget that allows me to take a screenshot of a blank wallpaper or the blank page on my home screen, and then it inserts a little spot of that screenshot into a widget so it looks transparent or it looks like there's nothing there, but really there's a widget there. Now moving on to the app library, swiping all the way to the right. Once again, I appreciated, Apple, that you're trying here to make things organized and clean, but I don't like that I can't move things around. Like I understand that maybe app developers tag their app as a certain type of app, so productivity app, utilities app, shopping app, whatever, but sometimes there's some apps that I feel like they're not really productivity to me. They kind of belong with the shopping or whatever. And there's a whole folder called Other, which in my opinion, I think some of these could be in one of those other labeled folders that they have. So I find it annoying that you can't just move them around or create your own folders. So I do like, though, the list view option when you either go to search for an app or when you swipe down to see all your apps in one little list. I prefer to use this over the actual folders that they create because it's so much easier to find things alphabetically than it is to try to find out what kind of app do you have and try to find it in one of those folders. Next, talking about the control center. Personally, I like the way it looks. I think it's aesthetically looking pretty clean and pretty nice, but I don't like that you have to go into the settings app to customize it and change it. There is no any kind of quick toggle or quick option or settings button that allows me to just go straight into the settings to change up the control center. It would make things so much easier to remove things, add things, and organize them the way you want to organize them, or maybe hold down and be able to drag it around. But no, you have to go into the settings app to change it around. And that's a common theme within iOS. You have to go into the settings app to change other things from other apps, such as the camera maybe, such as the control center. It's annoying. I wish they gave you the option to quickly go into the settings so you can quickly change things up. It's just annoying. But other than that, I like the way it looks, and that's about it. Functionality-wise, it depends on which toggle you're talking about. I think most of them are pretty easy to understand and use them. But something that people may not realize is that you can hold down on some of them to launch another menu, which gives you more options for that specific setting and whatnot. So it can be kind of annoying because some of them don't do that. You kind of have to just mess with it and play with it to find out which ones give you other options when you're holding down. And another thing too is that if you don't have a lot of quick actions in the control center, it's going to put them all towards the top. So again, it's not super one-handed friendly. It makes it pretty difficult to use with one hand if you only have a couple things in there. And something I forgot that exists on iOS is when you swipe all the way to the left, you do have like a widget center where you can add all kinds of different widgets. It's there. If you want to use it, I personally forget that it's there all the time. So that's basically your experience of iOS with the main layouts of how everything works. I know I did a lot of complaining, and that's just because I'm coming from Android, so I expected different things. And there's things that I'm normalized to on Android that I expected to work like simply on iOS, and it just doesn't work like that. So I do have to adapt to it, and I do appreciate how simple it is, but sometimes I think it's a little too simple. But one of the biggest things with iOS is definitely going to be the ecosystem capabilities and compatibility with other Apple products, whether it be your own ecosystem, so being able to airdrop stuff to your own MacBook or connect easily to AirPods and AirPlay to other devices. So it makes it pretty simple and easy. And also they added a new feature where you can connect to phones and touch them at the top, and it easily transfers either your contact info, or if you're trying to airdrop, it'll easily just airdrop it seamlessly without having to actually go into your settings and doing that. So it's pretty cool and pretty convenient. And of course, you have iMessage and FaceTime and Find My. Those three things are probably really important to some people because if you have Apple AirTags, then obviously you can only use that with Apple products. If you rely on FaceTime to communicate and talk to and video message with a lot of people, obviously you can only get that on an Apple device, as well as iMessage, you can only get that on a Apple product. So if you rely on those blue bubbles, rely on iMessage games, and be able to send photos and videos through iMessage, then yeah, iMessage actually does come in pretty conveniently. And that may only be an issue in North America because I'm here in the US, so a majority of people that I communicate with do use iMessage, so it is kind of convenient to be able to communicate with them pretty seamlessly, especially like I said, those photos and images. But just regular texting, it's not a major change when going from Android to iOS. I also really like that you can use a back tap feature on this device. So basically I have it set up so that it brings down the notification center or the control center, because you have to reach all the way to the top of the screen to bring those two different sections down. And with this back tap feature, it makes it pretty easy to just double tap or triple tap the back of your device. And of course, since you have the pill cutout, there's software features to go with it to make it the dynamic island. So most of those apps that I use are just stock settings, and I don't really utilize the dynamic island features. It's there and I'll use it when I need to, but honestly, it's not something I try to force myself to use. So it comes in handy when you're listening to music. So you just click on it to go straight into the app, or hold down to go and see a playback menu, which allows you to quickly skip to a song or even scrub through the song itself. This also works with timers, so if you have a timer going, you can quickly see how long you have left in your timer. And one last complaint I have with iOS is the back gesture feature. Trying to go back on different applications, it's not consistent throughout the whole OS. Most of applications and most settings, you just have to swipe back and it goes back on the page, but it's only on the left-hand side. If you go from the right-hand side, it does nothing. And in some apps, it requires you to click some kind of back button in the top left corner, however they have their app designed. So it can be kind of frustrating when not everything goes back when you swipe left from the display. Something I will give kudos to Apple for is the software support. They tend to support their phones for at least, I think, 6, maybe even 7 years. And with the new A17 Pro chip, I feel like they gotta support that for quite a while given how powerful it is. But I definitely gotta give them kudos for that because they support their phones for quite a long time. And also the consistency of updates. You at least tend to get one update per month, which is good. Now, as far as the cameras, the iPhone 15 Pro Max does have the same 48 megapixel lens from last year with the wide, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, which I believe is still the same as last year, but they now have a new Tetra Prism lens that is a 5x telephoto, and I really like it. I want to thank Apple for finally adding that higher optical telephoto, allowing not only the optical to be good, but also advancing the digital zoom to, I think, 25x for photos and then 15x for video. This came in good handy when I went out to a soccer game to watch Mexico play, and being able to zoom in to a good amount and also still get a good quality shot was great. I love a good telephoto, so I am happy that Apple has finally added the telephoto. But overall, I think photos are overall really good iPhones tend to give you really good photos, in my opinion, from the color not looking too oversaturated. Now, I do think it's a little over sharpened on some photos. I think people may like that or may not like that. I think it totally depends on your own kind of taste. But overall, I think photos are really good in low light as well. Quality is good overall. And one of the biggest positives I always like to see on the iPhone is that the ultra wide, the wide, and the telephoto, even with this new telephoto, the color stays pretty consistent. No matter which lens you're using, I find that it looks good and equally good on all of them. The ultra wide on the iPhone 15 Pro Max also is able to get pretty close to something, so it's able to do like a macro-like shot. And like I said, the telephoto can zoom in to a max of 25x, but personally I think 5x not only looks good, but also 10x looks pretty decent, so you're able to get a good shot out of a 10x zoom capability. The wide lens is also able to switch between different focal lengths. I forget the technical things that they do to make this happen without actually just using digital zoom. So you can switch between, I believe it's a 1x, a 1.2x, and then a 1.5x. Basically trying to replicate different focal lengths as if you were using a normal DSLR camera. I personally never really used it. If you're a more serious photographer, then you're probably gonna like that. In low light situations, I found that it overall performed really well. The ultra wide and the telephoto don't do hot at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure the telephoto, it's not even being used in low light situations. If there's not enough light, it's just gonna digitally zoom on that main wide lens. But overall, I think the main wide lens does a solid job performing pretty decently with photos and low light situations. The front camera also looks pretty good. It is a 12 megapixel, and I do find that my skin maybe looks a little bit lighter than it really is in real life, but overall, I think it's a good shot. It looks well detailed, not too over sharpened, but also still looks pretty good. And I like that it's able to keep a good dynamic range, allowing the sky, the foreground, the background, everything to look well detailed and well colored without overexposing anything or over darkening anything as well. In low light, I did see an improvement compared to last year. Last year, the 14 Pro Max was pretty bad, like awful. This year, it's still somewhat bad, but it's not as bad as it was before. So I think in low light, pitch black situations, even just using the flash on the front camera where it just brightens up the display on you, it does a slightly better job, but it's still not anything amazing. And photos with humans or even pets, I believe, now capture depth information. So in post or in the photos gallery, you can go back to any photos that you took of yourself or someone took of you. You're able to turn on portrait mode, which then changes that photo from just a standard photo to a portrait mode photo. I think it's a good idea only because me personally, I never go into portrait mode to take a portrait mode shot, but now I have that option without me even trying. And also may help with other people as well. If you give your phone to someone to take a photo for you, you can now just let them take a photo with the normal camera settings, and then after the fact, in post, you could say, you could easily just go in and turn on portrait mode. Now let's talk about the cameras. So first, the front camera here. This is a 12 megapixel lens, and I am using it in stock settings at the moment. I will show you a bit of log later. I'm not sure if I'm convinced with my log and color grading capabilities, but there are those new features. But right now you're seeing just the front camera and also the audio of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. You can also hear potentially some background noise, see how it compares just to me talking and also the environment around me. Right now it is a somewhat cloudy day, so you're not going to be able to see much color because it is a pretty dull and gloomy looking day. I am walking towards the sound too, so I do apologize about that. But nonetheless, it gives you a good idea of the quality of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, of what it's capable of doing. More shaded area, just to, I guess, kind of get a look at some, not necessarily pitch black, low light situations, but more of a dark situation. Also see how the iPhone transitions. Looks like they did a decent job. It's still able to keep the bright area behind me there while exposed without overexposing. Looks pretty good, I'd say. So yeah, this gives you an idea of the front camera in just normal settings. Now looking at the back cameras here, this is the ultra wide. I believe it is a 12 megapixel lens. It looks pretty realistic to what I am seeing right now in my eyes, or in person I should say. One thing is that you can also get pretty close and be able to focus, for the most part, to subjects with the ultra wide and get almost like a macro like shot. Maybe it does better on like a here. Oh, it's flying away. Let's take a look. There you have it. Look at that detail. So yeah, you have the ability of doing that with the ultra wide, just to get like a macro-like shot. Also seeing the stabilization here as I'm just walking. Looks pretty well stabilized. Somewhat shaded area. Now as we switch to the main lens, this is a 48 megapixel lens. Again, this is all stock settings. This is what you get out of the box. It is recording in 4K 30 as well. So you are able to go up to 4K 60, but totally up to you to decide if you think that's like a type of format that you want to use. I guess it's best used for when you're recording slow motion. But yeah, that's up to you if you want to use that. Again, stabilization, overall pretty good. As we're walking here, it is kind of cold, so I am also shaking a little bit, so this will also tell us how good or not good the stabilization is. Taking a look at my car over there. Now if I zoom in here, this is the 5X. Now this is, I'm still walking, so the stabilization is being put to the test here with the telephoto. And I mean, it's definitely shaky on what I'm seeing here, but it's kind of expected. It's a telephoto, but if I stop, I think it looks really well detailed in my opinion. And a 5X comes into play big time. I'll show you some footage here shortly of when I went to a soccer game. And let me tell you, that experience was really good just because that's when the telephoto really comes into play. Being able to use the telephoto for far away scenarios where you're not that close to the action and still want to get decent quality. And it does amazing being able to record in 5X. So yeah, the camera for experience for a concert or a soccer game or any kind of like stadium type of environment, you're gonna get a good experience. So now taking a look at the low light situations of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is again just standard settings. I'm not using the ProRes or anything like that. Straight up 4K 30. Right now I'm in front of a light source, so I'm actually getting decent light. So looks pretty decently detailed because of the lights here. But as I move to a section where the light's behind me, you can see the lack of detail on me and actually the noise that's growing because there's no source in front of me. And as I move to a section where there's no light like at all, you can see the amount of grain growing, the noise, the lack of light. It's just completely pitch black, so it's looking bad. So I'd say overall in low light, if you have, maybe you're like in a city or just low light, but there's enough source of some light somewhere to give you some light, you'll be able to get a decent okay shot as far as the front camera here. Now taking a look at some footage with the iPhone in low light situations. Right now we are on the main lens, the wide 1X. You can see here that it's doing a decent job. It's looking pretty realistic, but also not over exaggerating the colors, but also not looking terrible because it's not looking dark, which is good. Now if you do switch to the ultra wide, it does look a bit worse for wear. It's not able to bring in as much light into the source, making the video itself a bit darker around areas where there's not much light. And if we move to a section where there's little light to no light, then you'll notice here that it's pretty much all grainy blackness. Yeah, you can't really see much, if anything at all. And if I switch to the wide lens here, you can see actually a little bit of light grew there. So while you still can't see much, because I actually can't see much either, realistically here, it actually looks like it's trying, which is always good, but you can't expect to rule the world here. And if you actually use a telephoto as well, you'll notice that it doesn't actually use the telephoto. It's just using the main lens and just cropping in to 5X. So while it still lets you zoom into 5X, it's not actually using the 5X telephoto. Now, if there was enough light, then yeah, it would switch to that telephoto, but right now there isn't. So as you zoom in here, you can see it's looking bad because it's a lot of grain, a lot of noise, not enough detail because there's not enough light for the actual telephoto to be used. So there you have it. That's the cameras on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Personally, I think this year especially, you're getting a more versatile camera system, and with how good iPhones already are with their photos and videos, I think adding that new telephoto is a good idea, and it's going to really bring it up to the levels of other Android devices that tend to have a more versatile system because of the more lenses they're able to use. As far as battery life, you do get a 4,441 milliamp hour battery inside of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is, I think, a little bit bigger than last year's iPhone 14 Pro Max battery size. And coming from the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the battery experience on the 14 Pro Max for me was actually pretty good. So coming from that phone to this phone, the 15 Pro Max was not a massive jump. I think I saw a slight improvement, but overall, it really just felt the same, which is still a good experience. I'm able to get at least 24 hours of total usage with the iPhone 15 Pro Max with one charge, to a maximum of like, I don't know, 36, sometimes even 48 hours total usage. So sometimes I can get a whole 2 days with the phone, but usually on average it was 24 hours to like 30 hours. So I would get the whole day, and then the next day I could use a couple more hours. And with my screen on time, I was getting anywhere from 3 hours to about 8 hours, depending on what I was doing that day. So it definitely depends on your usage and what kind of stuff you do on your phone. So everyone's mileage will definitely vary. But for me, my experience has been good with battery life. But as far as charging, even though you do have a new port of USB-C, you're still capped out, I think, at 25 or 30 watts of fast charging. And it's slow. It's not that fast. It takes roughly an hour and like 50 minutes, just under 2 hours to fully charge. So it takes a good amount of time. Now it is fast, going from like 0% to about 50% or so. So if you're on a pinch and you need to charge before you go out again, just charge it up for 20 minutes or so, and you'll be good for another maybe 12 hours. So I think while it's slow to fully charge, it's still nice to know that even though you can't charge to 100% quickly, whatever you get in those 30 minutes or so will be able to get you through a good amount of time. The 15 Pro Max also still has MagSafe available, which I don't even know what the wattage is for MagSafe because I actually don't even use it. Same thing with wireless charging. I think it might still be 7.5 watts of wireless charging, and I don't really use wireless charging at all either. The USB-C also allows for it to use the reverse wired charging. So how other devices, other Android devices have reverse wireless charging, the iPhone 15 Pro Max has reverse wired charging. So this is convenient to charge small accessories. I think it's capped like 4.5 watts, so it's not fast at all, but if you need to charge someone else's device, you could do that. But this helps with smaller accessories such as your AirPods. So there you have it, the iPhone 15 Pro Max after about a month of usage. Would I recommend it? I would say yes. It's a great phone. So if that's all you care about, yes, it's a fantastic phone. But for me, it's the software that kills it for me. It's got great hardware, it's got a good display, it's got great battery life, great cameras, performance is amazing, but the software, iOS, it's not my favorite cup of tea. So for me, it's not going to be my everyday phone because of that software limitations that iOS brings or just doesn't have available as far as customization. So everyone has their own opinion, but that's just my Achilles heel for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So while it's a fantastic device, pricey nevertheless, but it's still a fantastic device. So that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this was helpful, and peace.